Right, well, welcome again to the official Sciblogs podcast. We're up to episode 7 now. I'm Elf.
I'm Amy.
And today we have our usual collection of odds and ends from around the internet with a particular science bent.
Yep.
So without further ado, we'll jump straight into the beginning. The first one is a shout out to a great little competition that's running here in New Zealand at the moment. It's the ETITO Bright Sparks competition. And for this competition, students, and these are school-age students usually, have to develop a prototype using electronics. And there's all sorts of really, really cool prototypes up online at the moment. The reason we mention it this week is that you have precisely 8 days, 4 hours, 9 minutes and 5 seconds in which to vote for your favourite competition. So get online, have a look at some of these cool things these young people are doing with all kinds of electronic wizardry, and vote for your favourites.
There's some seriously beautiful stuff going on. One of our friends, mutual friends, is mentoring one of the young bright sparks. Obviously, we won't give you his name, but the stuff that this kid is doing at the tender age of something like 14 is just unbelievable.
They are absolutely incredible. It makes you proud to be a New Zealander, I tell you that much.
It really does. I think kind of ashamed that I'm just so much older and so much less cool. But oh well. All right, well, moving on, the next one is courtesy of Cal Academy, which is the California Academy of Sciences. If you're ever in the Bay Area, you should definitely go and check it out. But this week's one is entitled Bio-Inspired Bug Evolves. And I'm sure you all know about biomimicry, which is the idea of copying nature when we engineer and design things, because nature's had some fair amount of time to get it right, to go through all those iterations. So there is one little, it's called Dash. It's a little robotic cockroach which has been assembled from just off-the-shelf, inexpensive materials, and the idea is that it can be sent into dangerous things where humans shouldn't go, like collapsed buildings or anything like that. And it's got, it's worth mentioning, it's got 6 legs, but apparently, it's not nearly as awesome as its biological counterpart, the cockroach, as to where it can actually scamper. So it has difficulties with stability when it's going obstacles. So anyway, the scientists who are playing with it thought, well, what if we chuck some wings on it? And they use toy wings, and let's see what that does. And it turns out it does actually do an awful lot better. It's a lot more stable. When it's going downhill, it's less likely to tumble. And it just generally helps it a great deal. It can run a lot faster as well. But the interesting thing, and where it's actually now informing our understanding of how flight evolved, is that it looks like flight couldn't have evolved from animals that run on the ground, because this little machine is showing that doesn't seem terribly likely. I mean, certainly it's not a fait accompli. They're saying, look, this is quite different. But nonetheless, it points to the fact that flight may have actually evolved from tree-dwelling animals who glide, which I think makes a certain amount of sense and was one of the two sort of competing hypotheses. So yeah, it's really cool when we see nature and science sort of informing our understanding of both, I guess, mutually. And it's really cute.
Talking of really cute things, the next article from me is just epic. So there is a competition, for those of you that are not aware, held by the journal Science, for you to dance your PhD.
Marvellous.
This year's winners have just been announced, and they have 4 categories. So they have a physics, a chemistry, a biology, and a social sciences category. And I'm very proud to say that the winner of the physics category took out the overall prize for his dance, which excellently, and I've watched it, and this is absolutely fantastic, which communicates the microstructure property relationships in titanium components produced by selective laser melting. And believe you me, I did not think you could communicate that through dance, and I could not have been more wrong. There's a whole bunch of really cool videos here. Check out the pill tree or the links to take a closer look, but these are hilarious and really thought-provoking at the same time.
Absolutely, which is what science communication is all about, particularly when you've got a skinny PhD cat dancing to what sounded like sort of interesting electro stuff. But yeah, check it out. It's well good fun. Right, the next one is also a little bit fun, but kind of interesting as well. It's about 10 NASA inventions that you might use every day, or inventions that came out of NASA's science. Now, NASA even has its own journal called Spin-Offs, I believe, which documents sort of what happens with all the science and all the money that it spends and develops and so on and so forth. So this is an article on the Discovery website that just goes through some of these. I'll just read a couple of them. For example, invisible braces, braces for your teeth. And these ones are invisible, so even celebrities can wear them. And they're made out of translucent polycrystalline alumina, or TPA, as some of you may know it.
Cool.
Then there's things like scratch-resistant plastic lenses for your glasses. They helped with the whole scratch-resistant thing. Temper foam, or memory foam, which we use for everything from mattresses to, I didn't know this, but custom body molds for dressmaking. Motorcycle seating makes a lot of sense, but quite cool. And that was designed to help cushion the astronauts when they were doing landings. So that makes a lot of sense. An ear thermometer. Now, I didn't actually know how one of these worked. This is very cool. So an ear thermometer is an infrared sensor which serves as a thermometer. And what happens is these infrared sensors take your temperature by measuring the amount of energy your eardrum gives off into the ear canal. And it came out of NASA looking at the stars. Then there's shoe insoles, which came from moon boot technology, which makes me very happy, just saying it. Adjustable smoke detectors, cordless tools, and water filters. The interesting thing, I think my favorite, is the cordless tools. They were designed so that the astronauts could take samples of rock and soil, and rigging power cords on the moon is apparently tricky. So quite sort of interesting. And also the smoke detectors, they work quite interestingly as well. Apparently the first one, these are adjustable, the first one to hit the consumer market is called an ionization smoke detector, and it uses a radioactive element called americium 241 to spot smoke or harmful gases. Basically what happens is when clean air particles of oxygen or nitrogen move through the detector, this radioactive element ionizes them, which creates an electrical current, and the current is then broken when dirty air or smoke particles or whatever rush through the detector, and it triggers an alarm. So very clever. If ear-splittingly screaming, I had an incident with one of them this last weekend. It's still ringing.
And before you freak out, they are actually, those are the standard smoke detectors that you have in your house. So chances are you already have them.
Indeed.
And that list does go on and on and on and on. For every... I was talking to Mark Rocket from one of the founders of Kiwi Lab.
Yes.
And he was telling me that for every dollar that NASA has invested in the space exploration program, they believe they've made $7 back in terms of new commercial innovations from what they learnt from trying to put a man in a place that man was not designed to go.
That's phenomenal, and of course brings into question the logic then of the consistent spending cuts on things like NASA.
Yeah, it's sad, but understandable in a financial crisis, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, this next one's quite interesting and will be relevant to everyone, because I'm sure everyone wants to know what happens inside of flies all the time.
We do.
Seriously, for a moment, one of the big problems when you're trying to use medical imaging technology, so things like NMR or MRIs, is that to collect images of soft tissue or something that's going on inside a living organism, usually you have to put something in that's either fluorescent, and to do that you usually have to either use some toxic chemicals, or you need to do some gene therapy, and they're either complicated or messy or have ethical issues. So what this group, we picked up this, sorry, it's published in the journal called Small, which is one of the great nanotechnology journals. This group has come up with a method of visualizing what happens inside of the body of a fruit fly, which is a pretty stock standard model organism, by using nanostructured carbon. So just same old boring carbon that we've mentioned before in terms of graphene or carbon nanotubes, but these ones are in a special shape. They're called nano-onions.
Excellent.
There's nothing particularly strange about this arrangement other than the fact that they're very, very small onion-shaped clusters of carbon. And what that does is it means that you can use NMR or MRI technology to actually watch these flow through a living organism. And here's the kicker, they're completely non-toxic, and they'll get excreted by the organism after use. So you can use them on living organisms and they show no ill effects. They've only tried it in flies at the moment, but it doesn't kill the flies, and it gets completely excreted from their system with no ill effects, which is pretty cool.
That's fantastic. So next time someone starts saying life is like an onion, there are just even more jokes.
And the other interesting thing from this is that not only is it non-toxic, they made it from wood pulp.
We like that. We like the sustainable thing, as I'm sure people have picked up by now. And in fact, directly on topic on that one is an article in Scientific American talking about Iceland and renewable energy and powering the interwebs, sort of. But pretty much. So one of the big problems with running the internet and, these huge sort of server warehouses, facilities that they use, is that generally they are powered by fossil fuels because it makes the most sense. Data centers, which is what we call these big warehouses full of servers that, they're things that run, for example, Google and pretty much everything else, emailing, all your online chats, the whole shooting match, is that they're generally put in countries where access to fossil fuels is cheap and very easy because, of course, these data centers cannot go offline. They need access to very reliable power sources, and they need it in massive amounts, not only to drive the servers and the computers themselves, but also around the air conditioning to keep everything cool. So it has been an issue now for a while. Of course, Microsoft and Google and Facebook are in a certainly unofficial but very well known about race to build the most efficient data centers because, of course, it brings their costs down, but at the end of the day, they're still using fossil fuels. Iceland has said, well, look, we have a business case for you guys. Most of our energy comes from renewable sources. It's geothermal and hydro power, so fairly similar to New Zealand in many ways. And they're saying, look, it makes our energy ridiculously cheap. They're quoting prices for energy as low as 4 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, it's almost 11 cents per kilowatt hour for commercial users of US electricity, and they have cheap power. So they're saying, yeah, come here. It's absolutely fantastic. It doesn't matter how much energy you use if your energy is sustainably generated, so you don't have to worry as much about that. And the other brilliant thing, which I think is really cool about it, is that air conditioning costs are much lower because Iceland's just so bloody cold. Which I think is pretty cool.
You wait.
It makes a lot of sense. Now, there are still some sort of things there are some bumps to get over. The international community is a little bit jumpy. And there's just there's some new pipe that's being laid down that should help reduce latency if Iceland is going to step in. But it does make sense. It's between Europe and the US. It's got cheap energy. It's got sustainable energy. I think it's marvelous. So we'll watch very keenly to see how that goes. And also considering that Iceland is bankrupt, I'm sure that they're offering very good deals currently.
Can't wait for the logical extension, which is to turn Greenland into a giant server farm.
That would be awesome. Oh, and I should say, sorry, I don't think Iceland is bankrupt anymore, but they were. I just want to be clear on that.
Now they've started selling energy there.
Yeah. So hooray for that. I think that makes a lot of sense.
It's very, very cool to see that.